You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.
Thank you so much for joining me for an incredible episode of the Daily African Proverbs here in the African Father in America podcast. My name is Simon Javan Okello, and I am really grateful that you've joined us on YouTube and also on Clubhouse. And today I have a really incredible guest who is also a good friend of mine, but also an educator, Dr. Eric Montgomery, who is, in my opinion, a leader that we really need to pay attention to. He is not just an educator, but he is also an activist. He's someone who speaks out for the downtrodden. And over the last year and a half, 2 years, I've really been, seeing him stand up for example, what's going on in Tigray, stand up for the Palestinian plight. So, Dr. Eric, how are you doing today?
Hey, happy, joyous, and free. Good morning to you, Simon, and thank you so much for those warm words and for having me. And good morning to the whole world out there, wherever you're at.
Excellent. Thank you again. So today we are going to explore an African proverb that is going to guide our conversation, but we're also going to explore an amazing book that you've been working on. It's part of the reason why you've not been on the Clubhouse streets or on the digital spaces over the last few months. Your book is called Spirit Service. But first, we want to take a virtual journey to South Africa so that we can really learn what our ancestors are telling us about this, about today, based on this proverb. This South African proverb that is the center of our conversation says that you can't beat the drum with one finger. And this proverb is about collaboration. And I wanted you to just take a minute and share with us your thoughts when you hear this proverb. You can't beat the drum with one finger. What is it that comes to your mind?
It's interesting because you put the origin and etymology in South Africa, but this is a proverb that I think percolates into many African cultures, including Luo. You know, in your own, they have this proverb that is similar. So, before I get into the collaboration and the cooperation, that co word, from in Greek and Latin, it means together, right? It means to do things together. And just like you can't beat the drum with one finger, you really can't go very far in life. Other African proverbs talk about enough spider webs can tie up a lion, right? But a little bit about drums that are interesting. People see drums for show. They see the way they've crossed over into, obviously, American, specifically Black American music, to create all these waves of different genres of music. But, as an African, these drums are sacred. Not just anyone can touch them. Not just anyone can play them. In fact, when a drum is constructed, where the wood is harnessed, the type of animal, whether it be goat or what they use for the hide, all of these things undergo very, very sacred rituals and have to be chosen. And then also the drums before they're played, at least in Vodoun in West Africa, where I do my research, but also in Cuba, in Brazil, throughout the African diaspora, they make offerings to these drums, right? These drums are made offerings to. They're fed certain foods, and the more fingers on the drum, the more timbre, the more pitch, the more nuance and complexity you can get. Now, it is true that within African drums, sometimes, like some of these, like I have here, I don't know if people can see, but an adondo drum, which is a spoken talking drum, right? So when they play drums like these and they're hit with a stick and they curve it and get different sounds, there are times even on the briquete drums, they do use a finger to control the pitch. It's very elegant, right? But that finger that's controlling the pitch on the other end is a stick or something beating it, very much so. Interestingly, when I think about these beautiful, beautiful African proverbs, you don't beat the drum with one finger. When the drum beat changes, the dancer must adapt, right? So does the dance. Even without drum beats, banana leaves dance. A man is obliged to beat his own chest when he has no drum. Don't beat the drums of war unless you're ready to fight. If you give bad food to your stomach, it drums for you to dance. There's so many of these, right? The drum is the favorite instrument of the spirits. The canary that dances along the bush path must have its summer in the nearby bush. So all of these ties to drumming and to rhythm are a very African-centric thing. And the drum is like a heartbeat, right? Now, when you learn how to, the amazing thing for me is children in West Africa who have never touched these drums. Sometimes when they touch the drums, they can play these rhythms that even people with PhDs in ethnomusicology can't play. The suppleness in the sound, because you're dancing on your mama's back during these ceremonies, right? Everything, at least in West Africa, from the washing of dishes to the cooking of food to the selling at the market, everything is rhythmic. And at the base of that rhythm is the drum, and that drum being the universal heartbeat, not to get too metaphorical, but is really, really deep. So yeah, we don't beat the drum with one finger because it doesn't make a pleasing sound. In fact, to play with the drums and to beat it with one finger or to do something rudimentary would be disrespectful to one's ancestors. And because your personhood and identity overlaps with these ancestors, it would be disrespectful to oneself and to one's group, to one's clan in order to do that. My favorite thing about drumming, like blacksmiths, that people don't realize is it's very rare that you see somebody who's a master drummer who also goes into trance, who is a devotee or a wife of the spirit, dare I say. I have seen a few people who have gone into trance playing the drums and gone from the drummer to the dancer and then turn into the dancer and turn around to the drummers while possessed by the spirit and demand that the drummers play his or her rhythm, normally his rhythm. It tends to be more males who drum. But yeah, this collaborative aspect, this idea of working together, how far we go together, is indicative of this proverb. And so, yeah, we don't beat the drum with one finger. In fact, the word beat itself involves repetition. It involves rhythm. It involves all these different terms that one finger in and of itself cannot construct. So that would be my take on that beautiful proverb.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Montgomery. And welcome everyone to the Daily African Proverbs. We are live streaming on YouTube. The link is at the top of the Clubhouse room in case you're just joining us. My guest today is Dr. Eric Montgomery, who is sharing with us. First, he shared with us his perspective on today's African proverb from South Africa that says, you can't beat the drum with one finger. And, I just love how you broke it down. You broke down the importance of the drum and how the drum is made, and also the ritualistic process that is given to the drum before it's played. I just loved that a lot. Now, if you're just joining us, there are a couple of ways that you can also be helpful. You can share the link to this Clubhouse room, within Clubhouse and outside of Clubhouse. You can also clip this conversation on Twitter, retweet, and let us know in the chats what you're thinking about our conversation so far. And also remember that we are doing Africa Day this Wednesday. In fact, Dr. Eric Montgomery is going to be one of the speakers during Africa Day. So I'm going to veer off the structure of our conversation for a moment before we come back to a story from your childhood that inspires you today as a leader. I want you to talk about Africa Day since you participated last year. Just briefly share with those who are watching or listening, what Africa Day means to you. Last year, you really tried to bring the daughter of Chinua Achebe, Dr. Wenwa. I can't remember her name, but you have to... Yeah. So tell us just a little bit about last year's Africa Day, what you thought about it, and what excites you about this year's Africa Day.
Well, it was a tour de force. It's 24 hours. The amount of logistics and planning, speaking of and collaboration, it sort of epitomizes that. It was amazing. Dr. Achebe came to talk about African epistemology, specifically the power of women who have been sort of written out of history, the power of matriarchy in different societies throughout Africa, and then some of her research among the Igbo. It's such an eclectic stew. Even in 24 hours, even doing 48 different topics, you could not possibly encompass all that is Africa and the diaspora. I really like that you focused, last year there was talks on China and Africa. There was a lot of, a lot of music from around the world. If I take part, it's going to be 3 or 4 in the morning. I'm going to wake up and choose one of those sections, and I'll be looking at indigenous African epistemologies and ontologies and ways of seeing, ways of being, ways of knowing. And hopefully it'll give me the opportunity to talk about Orisha and Vodoun, both in West Africa and throughout the New World. On this side of the Atlantic as well. So it's a sheer collaboration, not just the amount of things you learn. You know, I'm a college professor. There was things, I was taking notes last year. There was things, and I still have the notes over here from the Africa Day last year. You can see I filled. But more important than the details and the things that you learn from African Day are the connections that you make. People who may be more in your wheelhouse, whether you're working on farming, or maybe you're trying to, do some sort of sustainable impact, or something tied to water, or something tied to women's empowerment or development, whatever it may be. You can make these connections and then maintain them either on Clubhouse or via other social media. So it's a 24-hour event. It goes all day. Literally, it's going on, in all, Grace Lee Boggs used to say, "What time is it on the clock of the world?" She's the Detroit activist. And what she meant by "what time is it on the clock of the world," I think about Africa. The sun never sets on the British Empire, but the sun never sits on the African Empire. There are Africans in all 24 hemispheres all the time with these beautiful stories and these beautiful cultural nuances. But more importantly, I like the forward thinkingness of it. I like that, that this isn't some, let's get stuck in mechanistic ancient Africa as if it's this frozen in time culture that we all come from. But no, where are we going, and what should we do about it? And why hasn't it been done already? The focus on solutions and collaborations, everything even from NFTs to talk about crypto, even all these postmodern elements are weaved and embedded into this 24-hour Africa Day. And I encourage everyone to check out the website, look at the schedule, even if you're busy on Wednesday, the 25th. Maybe you can, maybe you're just listening during lunch and then can't come back until dinner. But I pick out what ones really speak to you and resonate with you, and try to come in and be a part of the collaborative process. And it was wonderful last year. I can't believe it was a year ago. Gosh, how time flies, brother. I cannot believe that's a full year ago. And I look forward to joining you again on the 25th. And I'll be in the Religious and Ritual, African Religious and Ritual, which I believe is 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. So yes,
yeah,
I think they're the first ones, right? They're the first ones. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the second hour and the third hour. And in fact, we did a dry run yesterday with that segment. You are the one who is going to open it, and it's going to be led by Gogo Rutendo Ngara. She's curating the 2 hours. I'll connect you through WhatsApp right after this, but she'll give you about 10.
And you have my number. That's great.
I do. Yeah, I do. I just have to say that yesterday during the dry run for the Exploring African Spirituality, I really got to understand that it's really our ancestors that led us to do this Africa Day virtually, because if we could not do it virtually, especially on Clubhouse, the kind of people that we have for that Exploring African Spirituality segment, we have like real sangomas, in South Africa. We have young people that they use music to connect to our ancestors in ways that, they saw the Nyatiti, they're in South Africa, but they learned about the Nyatiti through their research and made it on their own. So seeing it behind me like it is now was something so pleasant to them. Then I heard them play Gabon music instruments. They've never been to Gabon. So, he was explaining how he's being led by the Spirit to research and make these instruments. And his goal is to connect with the tones that our ancestors listened to musically and to share them with the world. So then there was a chef too that is also primarily focusing on African, the original African foods, not maize, but sorghum. She was talking about how she's brewing, mkomboti in South Africa, the South African beer, and also how that one is also a portal to our ancestors drank these beers. And after they did that, the things that they thought about, the things that they did. So it was just, for me, very, very fascinating. Anyhow, I want to come back to you. As I was saying at the beginning of our conversation, you are one of the people that I really have a lot of love and respect for. You are always active when it comes to, the Palestinian issues. You are always active when it comes to even Clubhouse, when black people's voice are not being heard. You are always one of the people that are advocating and speaking against that. I want you to just share a childhood story that helps us to understand who you are today as a leader.
It's a good question.
And feel free to paint a picture, of maybe even your favorite food, your favorite streets, the colors and the smells,
Sure. So I grew up in and out of a place called Lapeer, Michigan, and near Flint, Michigan. And my mom was, I have 3 stepbrothers and stepsisters. We all have different fathers, but we were raised by my mom, single mom. So it was a tough life. I think I had 4 I call it the stepfather factory in my poetry. I had a whole bunch of stepdads, some of them better than others. But I was able to sort of escape through. I got very lucky. There's a lot of privilege that comes with being this whitish guy, right? Even growing up in Flint, because the truth is most of the Latinos and black folks I grew up with they're dead or they're in prison. There's a few exceptions, but the truth is not many exceptions. And my brother was in trouble even from the time he was young. He ended up going to prison when he was in his teens, maximum security prison. He's out doing a little bit better right now, but dealing with alcohol and stuff. But even as a young child, when his father and my mom were going through problems, there's a lot of domestic violence and stuff. I was 17 years old, and I went to the parent-teacher conference, and I spent the whole day, because my mother and his father didn't go, at kindergarten. And he was in a group of kids that were acting out, I guess, having certain problems, not just with learning disabilities, but maybe more behavioral issues. And one of the projects was for them to all draw apples and say, what color is an apple? And so everyone got construction paper and they draw these apples and they go around the room and what color is an apple? And most kids said red. And a few kids said yellow, and a few kids even said green, and one even said brown. And my little brother, being the smartass that he was, he said white. And the teacher looked at him and looked at me in the class, and she said, now, Ryan, apples can be red and they can be yellow and green, but white. And he said, take a bite and look inside. And really, the majority of an apple is white. Not what we see with the visible eye, but there's more white content than there is red content, than there is black content or green content. And that story really sticks out to me as a child, because I'm an anthropologist now, and I didn't realize it at the time. And it made me cry, because he was being a smartass, but he was also thinking deeper, right? These minds that the ancestors and the spirits give us, they're like parachutes, and they only function when they're open. And when we look, and the real funny thing is a year later, I went to Africa for the first time, and I was in Ghana, Togo, and Benin, and I extended my trip a few weeks, and I was staying in a village in Togo, a Vodoun village in Togo, that I call in my writings and books Bedala. It's not the real name. I give it a pseudonym. And I was in the abode, the quarters, with the priest, the Vodoun priest. And he got up. This is the first night after the group left, and I'm in a corner of the room in the shrine in a bed. Of course, they give you the best bed, so I'm sleeping in the chief's and the priest's bed. Literally, my first time there. And he wakes up, and I hear him making this sound on metal and clanking, and summoning the spirits, and burning different incense and stuff like that. And it scared me, and I was wide awake in the bed. And why did it scare me? Even though I wasn't raised Christian, I started thinking to myself, this is diabolical. This is demonic. If I get through this, because it really scared me, because women came into the shrine during the night who were in trance, and they were speaking glossolalia, and they were speaking in tongues. And I remember the next morning when I woke up feeling afraid, almost wishing that I went back home, and I went to the shrine, because you have to say all that is on your stomach in Africa. The words, they're like a gun. If you don't say all that's on your stomach, in Ewe, they call it dome, your stomach. The words are on your stomach. If you don't get these out, then they lead to witchcraft. They lead to player hating. They lead to jealousy, envy, all these things that are alive and well in the African-American community, right? These are really African things. And after I went back and talked about it, he got to why. Why did you feel afraid? And I realized now it's white supremacy, right? That's how deep it goes. Because even African-Americans on my trip are afraid of voodoo. I talk to people who are priests, educated people, that you do research on voodoo. Oh, don't curse me. Don't pins and needles, right? That it goes so deep. This religion is so historically disparaged. And so it takes me back to my childhood. And for as crazy as my childhood is, take a bite and look inside. That apple is mostly white. And get to the core, right? Get to the core of the issues and say all that is on your stomach. And that's what vulnerability and freedom is about. So now, sometimes I work with addicts and I work with alcoholics. And what I teach, even with my students, I talk about the domestic violence in my life. I talk about sexual violence that I've acquired in my community and in my city. And I talk about my own battles, my own addictive personality, my own issues. And the reason I do that is because you have to say all that is on your stomach, right? And you have to look beyond things, because I'm not what I think I am. And I'm not what you think I am, Simon. I am what I think that you think I am. So the way we construct who we are is the way we believe other people see us, right? That's Cooley's looking glass self in sociology. But in Africa, when who you are is not mind, body, and spirit, like in the West, this dualistic thing, but it really overlaps with certain trees, certain foods that you mentioned, right? Certain ancestors, right? When your ancestors, when you're pierced with a little bit of your ancestor, it doesn't mean that you're your Uncle James, but it means that a piece of Uncle James is in you. Your identity and personhood is pierced. And of course, through divination, all of these things are figured out. People have certain drum rhythms, certain songs, certain proverbs. It goes so deep, right? And that's the idea of taking a bite and looking inside. What my 5-year-old brother was saying as a smart ass in sixth grade was so astute. And that's what cultural relativity is in anthropology, to not judge people from above, but to try to go native, emic instead of etic, inside, and understand things on people's old terms. Of course, that's impossible to do. I'm still a hetero white male with all this privilege, and that's a real problem in anthropology and across all disciplines, especially when we're in these black circles talking about things like black religion. But that being said, it comes with a great responsibility, and I think we all have a responsibility to take a bite and look at what's inside. So that's a little story of my childhood.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I just want to get back with our audience members. Thank you for joining us on YouTube. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do. And if you're on Clubhouse, please remember to share the link to the room, ping in 3 to 5 people to join us for this conversation. My guest today is Dr. Eric Montgomery, who has really been, blessing us with a lot of wonderful information. We started with his perspective on the proverb that we are discussing today, which is from South Africa. The proverb says, "You can't beat the drum with one finger." I want you to think about what this proverb means to you, because in a moment we are going to be listening to you, all our audience members, to know your own perspectives, but also note down what you're hearing from Dr. Eric, so that you can also, give him some flowers and comment when you have a chance shortly. But now I want us to talk about spirit service. This is one of your greatest projects that you've worked on. This is a book about voodoo in the African Atlantic world, and this is a book that you've edited with amazing doctors or individuals and friends like Dr. Timothy, Christian, and there's also a number of contributors. But I want you to take space now and share with us why you worked on this project in 2022. Why is this important to you right now? Spirit service.
Thank you, Simon. So the book you can see there behind me is Spirit Service. You can see the Ouroboros here, right? Vodoun in the African and Atlantic world. And the reason why I thought it was incumbent to put together this book is it actually started at an American Anthropology Association meeting in 2017. We held a double panel, and we had historians and anthropologists, some working in Haiti. One of the chapters is from New Orleans, the ancient voodoo in New Orleans. But voodoo is the most misunderstood, discriminated against, disparaged religion in the history of the world. Think about that for a second. And Orisha, if you combine Orisha from Nigeria, which of course proliferates throughout Brazil and throughout the Caribbean, even in places like Guyana, in Uruguay, even in Mexico and Panama, we see it. Then there's probably 100 to 150 million adherents of Voodoo, Vodoun, and Orisha, Santeria, for example, Macumba, Condomble, these different appendages. So think about that. And yet it's not considered a world religion. It's considered not only not a world religion and talked about in a world religion, but why? Why is it? Well, because it's black, number one, because it's oral, right? Most of it is, some things have been codified and written down, but this is orality. This is, and orality doesn't mean illiterate, inferior. The brightest people I've ever met in my life are African people who do not read and write, especially those who have traveled, because with orality and storytelling is there. So I thought it was incumbent upon us in this world, with all the rage being vampires and the way sci-fi is run with things, to really get outside of this. If we're going to talk about Black Lives Matter, then Black spirits need to matter as well, because Black spirits are the lightning that enforced everything in the diaspora. All Black folks around the world have that in common. What Robert Farris Thompson called a flash of the spirit. So when I was there, I realized I couldn't I'd already written a book on slavery and Mama Chamba, edited book, and then my dissertation was about Vodoun in the village. But I started digging deeper and realized that people from West Africa and Dahomey region were brought to Brazil and to Cuba before they came from Nigeria. So even though people think it's Orisha, the truth is there's words that are Aja and Fon that exist throughout the diaspora that come from West Africa. So I'm saying that Vodoun was there even before. So I just wrote an article last week about Vodoun in Brazil and Cuba. People don't think of it. They think Haiti, like this book. They think New Orleans sometimes, or they think Ghana, Togo, and of course Benin, the cradle of voodoo. But that's how deep these labels are for soup cans. So I wanted people to not just get out of discriminating against voodoo and say that it's not diabolical curses and pins and needles, but to actually breathe it. The word voodoo means breath. The word spirit in Greek means breath. To actually breathe it. And anybody with a few $100s can go and get initiated, because folks are poor around the world and they're going to give you what they want. And then you can come back and claim this. And I try to not talk too much about my initiation, because there's so much appropriation that goes on there. And there's a lot of trauma and pain, and there's a lot of responsibility that comes with it. That being said, I will do a Fa divination for people for free. I don't take any money. I do more spiritual work when I'm in Africa, because I don't have to answer questions about race. And it's a different thing in the US, right, than it is in Africa, the way that it's. But that was the idea of the book, to show not only that, but to show that this is constantly changing and adapting. You were talking about your friends from Gabon and making musical instruments who haven't been initiated and things like that. That's the African religious imagination at work. It's always open-ended. It's always unfinished. It's not linear. It's open to all this multiple levels of editing. Dare I say it was meta and postmodern before folks thought they constructed the world. This was already there in African spirituality, and not just in Vodoun, but in even in African Christianity. Even if you look at the various ways in which Islam is interpreted. And by the way, you have more Christians in Africa than you do anywhere else. You have more Muslims, almost 400 million, 450 Muslims. So people think Muslim, Christian, indigenous religion, and they create these things. No, the Islam and the Christianity is informed by an African spirituality, a Black African religious imagination that is alive in Vodoun, but goes beyond the labels of even things like Sufi Islam or Christianity. That's how deep Black spirituality is. And I know that from spending, 7 to 10 years of my adult life in the village, sleeping on shrine floors, and trying to understand and trying to codify this stuff. So that's what this book was about. And the book actually has some really great authors. Karen Richmond from Notre Dame is there. Terry Ray, who wrote with Jacob Olupona, the idea of Orisha being a world religion. He does this beautiful chapter. Karen Richmond's chapter is about voodoo disappearing and the rise of Pentecostal, not just Catholicism, but of Pentecostal religion and Protestant religion in Haiti. And she asked, where have all the Unsi gone? Where have all the medicine men gone? And then there's articles, one about taking hold of faith in New Orleans by Jeffrey Anderson. Alyssa Jordan, who's now at UPenn, does a beautiful chapter called Voodoo Skins, Making Bodily Surfaces in Social Haitian Voodoo Infant Care, about how so voodoo is not a religion. It's a way of life, right? Even the way that they are cleaning children and bathing children from the time they're very young, and the songs that are sung and the type of medicinal plants and stuff that are used are tied to voodoo. And then my friend Nixon Cleofat of Haitian origin, Haitian American, even does something that no one really has done much of, and he writes Voodoo, an inclusive epistemology toward a queer eco-theology of liberation. So he talks about non-binary realms and that are inherent in voodoo, and what it's like identifying as gay, and not just as a professor, but as a Voodoo priest. And then a lot of stuff on death and funerary rites, and a lot of stuff on the forests themselves and the trees tied to it. So that's the book. My chapter goes into what I call old versus new voodoo, Goro voodoo, which is a Hausa word for kola nut. This is a voodoo pantheon that's been born in the last 100 years, versus Yeve voodoo, which is, Papa Legba and Sakpata, the older spirits. And I talk about how Goro voodoo is really about women from the north marrying in to these Eve Pacha lines, and the fact that debt stays, the fact that money was made off of domestic servitude and slavery. So all of these new gods are really from the north, where the slaves were brought, mostly women who were brought who married in, but they still fit into this pre-existing African voodoo matrix. So for example, Legba is a trickster god. He's the keeper of the gate, like St. Peter, right, holds the key. You got to salute Legba, Alegua, Papa Legba first, or he'll disrupt the whole ceremony. In Goro voodoo, there is Sunya Campo, who is the god of stone. And she is the sorcerer of stone, but she's also a trickster god and can be very spoiled and very hard to deal with. Both Legba and Sunya Kampa are the last born child. So the last born child in the African family has so many moms and dads, they pick up so many things that they tend to be bright. In fact, interestingly, why does Legba be the keeper of the gate? And the story is that Legba, when challenged by the spirits and by God, was the only spirit who could beat the drum and dance at the same time. In Africa, you are either beating the drum or you're dancing, but you're not beating the drum and dancing at the same time. Legba could do that. So these beautiful stories of these gods. Now let me mind you, other reason I wrote this book, Simon. They do more in my village for sickle cell anemia, for drug addiction. Now with cocaine and methamphetamine addiction starting to hit Africa, they can do more in my village with these voodoo plant medicine, what they call atike voodoo, which means tree root voodoo, than they can in the West or that they can in Europe. They were doing more for AIDS 30 years ago before antiretrovirals. Now, that being said, kids still die of diarrhea, tuberculosis, malaria. I'm not saying that this plant medicine and voodoo is superior to Western medicine or orthodox allopathic medicine, but what I'm saying is it needs to be included. Why is it not included? Because we talk about Ayurvedic, Indian medicine, hundreds of journals, Chinese traditional medicine, all kinds of things. But when it comes to Black folks, kind of like the religion, they're not included. Even though the plants that are growing in Brazil are very similar to the plants growing in West Africa. And I'm telling you the amount of things they can do with plants. And remember, plants are tied to drums and plants are tied to prayer. If you're sick here in the West, you're in the hospital, you're told to get quiet. They shut the door and then they come in and poke and prod you and wake you up every half hour. When African folks, even in the US, are sick and I'm in the hospital, everyone is there praying the whole time. They're not leaving so that people can rest. You understand? So the whole healing episode is different, but it's intricately tied to voodoo. Voodoo meaning breath, meaning spirits. And there's an awful lot. So I started just looking at rituals. And now I publish on plant medicine. Now I publish, on medical anthropology, on business anthropology, how voodoo women come together to create collectives, to create money and are starting NGOs, how voodoo people resist domination and hegemony, not just in Togo, but that is how Haiti came into being. It was a voodoo ceremony that overthrew white people. The only place in the whole world that happened was Haiti. And it was and they sacrificed a goat and they looked at Ogun, the god of metal. They had a ceremony. This is all there in the spoken archives. So we can't talk about Black liberation and Black Lives Matter if we can't talk about Black spirits matter. And we sure the hell can't talk about voodoo as long as it's framed as this diabolical, horrible thing draped in this racist imagery. So as a white guy with a lot of privilege and power who happens to know quite a bit about this stuff, I'm going to spend the rest of my life speaking truth to power and showing people what voodoo really is about. Not trying to convert people, but just trying to get them to take a bite of that apple and see what's inside, right? To use that mind like a parachute and open. So that's why we created this book and why I brought in 10 or 11 of the top scholars from around the world. Unfortunately, we have African, 2 Black folks out of 10. That's a problem in 2022, right? This needs to be written by Black folks. Black folks actually need to come in suits and start studying us Americans and writing ethnographies about us. That's when we've come full circle. But the truth is the kids in my village who get through secondary school, I have a few that I've helped go to college now for the first time. They're going to be engineers. They're going to be doctors. They're going to get MBAs. They're not going to be writing about voodoo, even though they know more about it than us, right? So, it's a great honor. It's a great privilege to study this stuff. I believe there's a great African Renaissance going on throughout the world, a very real Black and brown Renaissance of the global South that includes indigenous people. And I think we need to be a part of the solution or a part of the problem. And you can see all around the world the restriction of people to vote. What's going on with pro-choice and women's bodies, what's going on in the Supreme Court, the white supremacy, why can't we pass anything? Because 50% of people in Congress, at least 50%, depending, or roughly, are consciously or unconsciously white supremacists. And they have PhDs, they have law degrees, tons of law degrees. And yet if we were to ask them about voodoo or about Orisha or African religion or native religion, they would assume that it's this savage, barbaric, backwards thing. And so we have a long way to go. And that's why I hope this book helps demystify all the stuff around voodoo. And by the way, mystification is the process of explaining away what might otherwise be evident. That's what mystification is. To demystify that is to put the microphone into the face of folks who know a lot about this and to dig deeper and to peel back these layers.
Thank you so much, Eric. For some reason, we had a little technical glitch. So thank you, Amy, for letting me know that, you could not hear the speaker. That helped a lot. I appreciate it. If you're just joining us on Clubhouse, thank you. If you are on YouTube, thank you. I just want a heads up from someone who is watching this on YouTube. For example, Roger and Kesiwa, I know you are all on YouTube. Could you just let me know if the volume on, if the audio on YouTube is also good? Just type a yes there. And also type in the chat if the audio on Clubhouse is good. I just want to make sure. Okay, I see Amy saying that it's good. Okay, then take a minute if you're on Clubhouse and ping in, 3 to 5 people to join us for this conversation. Again, I'm just so grateful to all of you who are supporting the African Father in America podcast. And this is the Daily African Proverbs. I see Roger is commenting and saying yes. Thank you so much, Roger. Now, I want to invite you to join us on the stage. If you are on Clubhouse, join us on the stage in a moment. We are going to just hear what you all have to say on the proverb and on the conversation that Dr. Montgomery and I are having. So I want you to pick your favorite excerpt from this book. But before you do that, or while you're doing that, share with us how you connected with Chinua Achebe's daughter and her contribution to this book. I know she contributed somehow.
Yeah. No, she actually did a blurb on the back for us. But I'm at Michigan State University and she's there. Michigan State University has an African Studies Center and she's a full Hilberry professor of history at Michigan State University. And Dr. Achebe is also the head of, let me make sure that this is muted over here. She's also the head of diversity and inclusion at Michigan State. So I had asked her, I had looked at her last book on different women influences and had a good comment. And I asked her to do a blurb. And so she writes on the back of the book, she didn't put, and she just did a little blurb. She said, Spirit Service is a tour de force in scale and scope. A must read for students of African studies, history, religious studies, anthropology, and performance. This is a collection of excellent and necessary addition to anthropology, history, and religious studies courses on Haiti, voodoo in the United States, African cultures, world religions, religious ritual, and performance art, and so much more. So, so she's just she's a hero of mine. I happened to work with her. And her husband, Folu Ogundimu, who is actually in media arts, is at Michigan State. He's a Yoruba background. He's a wonderful guy. So we're actually working on a thing, I guess I can say it. We need to get back to the script writing, but something on Mami Wata. Me and Folu and Wando are working on a script for Mami Wata, both a documentary and a scripted film. Of course, Mami Wata is the ancient spirit of water and giving, and she can be light skinned or she can be dark skinned. She can be, fair skinned, but all throughout Brazil, all the way to Congo, around the world, this ancient sacred snake, dare I say, rainbow serpent of Mami Wata is worshipped. So we're working on something with Mami Wata. So Spirit Service is in the Dominican Republic, they call it, in Togo, they call it Voodoo. In Benin, it's called Vodoun. And in Haiti, they call it Vodou, V-O-D-O-U. So West African religion has really, for hundreds of years, served as a repository of sacred knowledge, right? And while simultaneously, like I said, it's always evolving in response to the human experience and globalization. So the idea with this is to to offer some much needed perspective, many different ways of seeing across many disciplines for looking at voodoo and modernity, and to sort of dismantle the historically disparaged bad connotations that it's entailed since its inception, at least with Western people. So the excerpt I want to read is from chapter 4, Crossing Currents. It's my chapter. I don't feel at liberty to read somebody else's chapter, although I was going to read from the intro or conclusion.
But I do have something just to say
Yeah.
real quick, Dr. Montgomery. I would love to interview as many of the contributors to this book as possible, including Dr. Wandua. So just plant, that seed has been planted in your mind.
Well, I will tell IU Press, the Indiana University Press, which is one of the leading, I think, the best academic press on African stuff, which is why we went from their book. They encourage these folks to be out doing this work. So I can include the press in the invitation, and then they will feel like they got to do it. And they should be doing it because this book is fresh. It just came out like within the last few weeks. And if you don't strike while the iron is hot, then it doesn't do well. So yes, I will invite other collaborators. And Wando has another project coming up too. I can work with, I can talk to Wando, and she's normally really busy, but she probably has more time in the spring, summer than normal. So I'll reach out to her as well. And we'll find out what project she's working on now and what she wants to talk about.
Thank you so much. Now we'll listen to you read your favorite excerpt from the chapter that you contributed. Thank you so much.
All right. And it's more to sort of help, frame it than necessarily being my favorite. I just think it's a good one. This is from chapter 4, Crossing Currents, from the conclusion. What is Vodoun? Why does it matter? How is it represented? How does a comparative and a descriptive approach help shed light on the similarities and differences between and within African cosmological systems? Vodoun is an ancient, ritual-centric belief system that matters because it develops, nurtures, and heals the entire life world of its followers. The artisanship that goes into the creation of the shrines, of the god objects in the material culture is a testament to the deeply organic power of Vodoun persons, themselves an intersection of past, present, and future worlds. In Bedala, this past world includes the forced marriage of northern slaves, what are called amefleflewo, which literally means a bought person. Those bought persons are now reified in regular commemorative rituals and accompanying consecrated objects. Sacred slave jewelry, called chambagan, is found or gifted and imbibed with medicinal power from plants through prayer and through other rites. The short ethnographic film compiled by me and Dr. Vanier and linked here showcases the importance of Mama Chamba and slave spirits to voodoo and to Goro Vodoun. Chamba spirits are an entire different voodoo pantheon dedicated to the memory of northern slaves, also a town in northern Togo, and a multi-ethnic symbolic category that's tied to Fulani and Hausa peoples who were married into Ewe and Aja patrolines in the 20th century. The bracelets mimic shackles and are often seemingly disparate sacred objects that are found in the Mamiwata shrine or draped around Bangare, the warrior god's altar. These possessions originate in various forms swathed around Sakpata's head, strung from Mamiwata's entryway, or fastened to Papa Kunde or Bangare's god objects in the shrine or the sacred forest. Symbols and sacred objects matter because they are the embodiment of the creed. They represent myth in action. They give agency to participants and construct individual and collective interpretations and meanings. Devotees try to emulate their gods and their ancestors and capture their spiritual essence. The reason why people construct their gods with their own hands, manipulation, is because they want these spirits to act on their behalf, just as they honor the spirits with many taboos, rites, and prescriptions. Like the adepts themselves, these gods and shrines share many similarities and distinctions regarding their personhood and their godhood. These spirits are dynamic, mobile, and global. They are a testament to the African religious imagination, embedded, ecstatic, and magical. The fluid nature of these is all about spirit service, and the cross currents traverse symbolic and real borders while breaking down boundaries, ancient and modern, coastal and savanna, earth and water, human and divine, foreign and local, northern and southern, black and white, past and present. Devotees of Vodoun and contemporary Togo continue to honor and emulate their gods, revealing to the world a vibrant religious culture that has become a dominant aesthetic for the Black Atlantic world. So that's a conclusion of my chapter about the different gods on both sides of the ocean and how they sort of interplay with each other.
Wow, excellent, excellent. Thank you again for reading for us this important excerpt from the book. And for those who are just joining us, Spirit Service. My guest today is Dr. Eric Montgomery, who I connected with him originally through Clubhouse, and we've since then built a really good relationship. And one day we are going to visit, but currently today we are highlighting him as our guest because he has a new book that is out, and also because he is speaking at Africa Day this Wednesday. It's a 24-hour marathon happening on Clubhouse, and I want to now invite our amazing guests, who have been with us on Clubhouse, so that you can give us your voice. So just quickly, I'm going to ask, the speakers on the stage, just share, where you're joining us from, briefly introduce yourself, share your perspectives on today's proverb. The proverb says, you can't beat the drum with one finger. And then if you have any comment to Dr. Montgomery about the content of our conversation, also feel free to share your perspectives. Now, I see that Stella is on a phone call, so we are going to Stella, I believe you're on a phone call because that's what I see here. Lavender, would you like to share your perspectives briefly? I just want to check. Just unmute and say yes. And if you're not in a position to speak, Lavender and I work together, by the way. We all work for One Vibe Africa. So earlier on, she was a bit under the weather and she didn't want to say much. So I'll give you a second. Okay, then I'll go to Amy. Amy, how are you doing? Thank you again for being here with us. I would love to hear your perspectives on the proverb. So share where you're joining us from and also any comments on this interview I'm doing with Dr. Montgomery.
Good morning, Simon. Good morning, everyone. I am in New York, in Queens, New York. And so, yes, the importance of cooperation, it is everything. Specifically important to me as an African born in America, living in America, but connecting to the continent, going to the continent regularly for that particular purpose, because I believe wholeheartedly in Pan-Africanism and also in reaching across the oceans for each other and helping to grow, to understand, to reconnect and reclaim. So I think there is a real importance for Africans in the diaspora to connect, to hold hands, and to share our experiences to help us continue to grow and evolve. So that's my perspective in terms of cooperation. I did have a couple of questions for the speaker. Thank you, Eric, for sharing. You had a lot of very powerful information. So I'm just curious to know if you yourself are initiated in any systems. That's one question. And the second question I have is, how did you become interested in African spirituality to the extent that you are? Yeah, thank you.
Wow, those are great questions. So yeah, I was first initiated. You can't go into the shrine or do any of these things unless you're initiated, right? So some people talk more about it than others, but almost anyone who's worth their salt, black or white, who is writing on this stuff has undergone some levels of initiation, right? So I was initiated first as an adept in 1997, and then as a full-blown Bokono Sofo, or Vodoun priest, in 2001. I've also been initiated into Mami Wata as Amengasi, into Mama Chamba, which is a slave spirit cult. We had to deal with my history of slavery, the fact that white folks in my family certainly owned slaves, and to reconstruct that history through divination. So Ifa divination, I've gone through 3 or 4 different initiations with what the Nigerians call, Yoruba call Ifa, what they call Fa in Benin. I've been initiated into Fa in Benin, and also into Afa in Ghana and Togo. So, and that has to do with the god of divination, ancient system of geomancy, which I'm sure you know. So those are a few things. I've also gone through some initiations with some Babalaos from Puerto Rico and from Cuba, here in the U.S., in Miami and in Detroit as well, and held many of my own ceremonies and stuff. So yeah, I don't talk too much about that, but because you asked, and I want to be honest, yes, I've been initiated into it. I told you about how scared I was. I don't know if you heard of when he was praying in the middle of the night when I was in Africa for the first time. I was only 17 years old in college as a freshman, and I'd always been addicted to Black culture, growing up enjoying hip hop. And I mean, I was reading. I got into some trouble in my teens, but it was things like Malcolm X and James Baldwin. Reading Maya Angelou. This stuff changed my life. It always resonated with me. And then as I started digging deeper into the Black music and Black history, Black culture, especially what came out of New Orleans, and the fact that the folks in New Orleans, that was the only place you could drum. I don't know if you know that. In all of the U.S., on the slave plantations, only in New Orleans could they drum. But they could only drum once a week in a place called Congo Square, today Louis Armstrong Park. And they could only drum on Sundays. And the reason they let them drum on Sundays is because so many Haitians who had overthrown white people came to New Orleans, and they didn't want to have another revolt. So they allowed them to drum. And out of one Sunday of people drumming, everything that we know, from ragtime to jazz to rock and roll to hip hop to techno, is literally born. Not just Black music from New Orleans, but music that is pierced by Vodoun. And what I was saying, Vodoun means spirit, by the spirits of these ancestors. So to answer the second part of your question, I was afraid. It freaked me out. I don't like being afraid of things. That's why I started being intrigued by Vodoun. And it just captivated and blew my mind. And the day after I was in the shrine, a group of women called me out. They did divination, and I didn't have a choice in this. They said, this is what you're going to do. Because I was with a white Jewish lady who was married to an African man who I look at as my mother and father, Silvio Tete, and Dr. Judy Rosenthal, who is a retired emeritus professor from University of Michigan. And they said, you're going to do what Judy and Silvio, your mom and dad, did, only you're going to have to do it more. Judy is studying women. You have to talk about voodoo to the world. And, of course, people say different things, and people say, well, that's a hustle. They know if you as an American coming back, you're going to bring money, you're going to bring gifts. It didn't matter to me. It was in the sacred situation it was of these 40 and 50-year-old women, powerful women, seers, Mami Wata women, to say, you're going to come and study us. And all of them went into trance. They were all Tron Devis. And when they went into trance, the sign was, and here's what's crazy. When I went to fly out, I couldn't fly out with my flight. I drove to Ghana. And I found out later that they were holding up my flight to make sure that the passage for me to come back was necessary and looking for safety. So that's epiphany. That's revelation. That's African waking cosmology in the action. So I didn't choose this. It chose me, sort of. I mean, I chose to go to Africa and to study, and I chose to extend my trip. And from there, I've turned it over to the spirits. And I still do to this day. When I make big decisions, should I move? What's going on? I've been battling health problems. Do I go to India and film women's empowerment, or do I return to Africa? I'm always doing divination, always sending money to Africa for them to make offerings to the shrine to figure things out. And that's the best way for me to make big decisions in my life. And that being said, I'm very intrigued by, my ex-wife was Hindu for 15 or 18 years. So I was just at a Hindu wedding over the weekend. I'm very intrigued by other religions as well. I'm very inclusive with it. And I don't push any of my Vodoun or my beliefs in voodoo onto other people. But that being said, I've been initiated. I believe in it, and I believe it's beyond me, this calling.
Thank you for that. I really appreciate you sharing that. I asked that because I also am initiated in a few different systems and have been practicing African spirituality for many, many, many years. Raised my son in it. He is also initiated, and I actually did my master's studying African spirituality and did my thesis on women's and Mamiwata and Oshun and Yemoja. I'm a daughter of Yemoja, actually. But I appreciate what you said, because I find, especially in my studies when I was in grad school, I find that there's so many people who are interested in this and talk about it, but are not really initiated. There's a lot of like platforms online where people are speaking about these things from a very like novice perspective. Um, and that is the one thing that's kind of problematic for me. And it's dangerous because there's a lot of people giving false information to people that can be harmful. So I appreciate the fact that, you know, you went through all these various divinations and you were called, and like you said, it is a calling, it's spirit calling. So thank you for sharing that.
And the
Thank
other
you, Emmy.
thing,
That
thank you
was
for your comments.
beautiful. Go ahead,
I wanted
Eric.
to say real quick to Emmy, the other thing is people who have been initiated like to talk a lot about their initiations and play gatekeeper between who's been initiated and not initiated. And that is that novel stuff that is very dangerous. I can tell you this all has ancestry, and these all have roots, like Mami Wada, going back to, you know, especially like ancient Benin, Mami Dan, Mami Wada priestess, who's on the Clubhouse app. I would encourage you guys to follow her. She's really bright, been initiated. But yeah, we get in these things, and then you also have this whole war with the Nigerians saying what's going on in Cuba is not real, and you know, and slavery has ruined it. And then you have people in Cuba and Brazil saying to the Nigerians, "Well, you're all Islamists, you're all Muslim and Christians now. You're not even following the church anymore." So it turns into this, you know, these little wars. And I think it does more to mystify than it does to clarify. But that being said, we have to have dialogues, we have to have debates. And that's a reason I'm not on Clubhouse sometimes. It's not that people are novice or I'm on a level. It's that I can't give my power and time away to certain folks and play my whole role of gatekeeping, especially as a white male. It's not my place to do that. But everything you said is right on, 1,000%.
Excellent. Thank you again. Thank you, Emmy. Thank you, Dr. Montgomery. We'll move on to Mamzi. Mamzi, how are you doing? And what are your perspectives on today's proverb, you can't beat the drum with one finger? This is from South Africa. Feel free to also add any comment to the conversation that I've been having with Eric.
Hello, Simon. Hello, everybody. Hello, Eric. My name is Mumsy. I am Albertinskaya. I go by Mumsy. And the importance of cooperation in today's world actually means a lot to me. I like what you've put on into bracket. You cannot beat the drum with one finger. That just means you cannot make it alone. You cannot make it with partners, with collaborating with, because it's so much easier when we put our strength together to do something. Another African proverb says that you can go fast when you're alone, but you can go far when you go together. So to me, cooperation means everything. Another thing is for good cooperation, there has to be also a certain level of trust and integrity between those who are like collaborating, right? And so, like in Africa, we have in Cameroon, specifically where I am from, we have things called tontine, right? And go to this tontine some go every Sunday, some go once a month. And this is a place where sometimes they put money together. They use it as insurance. They put money together. They if someone has a wedding, they get together. If someone has a death, they get together. And you will be surprised to see how everything that gets organized in their little society is so well organized because of this cooperation and collaboration and trust and being there for your brother or for your sister. So to me, I grew up with that, and in those society, in those tontine, they don't even have a, 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 a paper to sign. You know how here you sign a paper. Your word is your signature. When you promise, then they trust you. They're in Tontine where they will give you $10,000 without you signing anywhere. But they know that because you said you're going to give back in such and such way, they're trusting that you're going to do that. And there is no question in no one's mind, including yourself, that you're going to do what you said. And we fear bad karma for doing something else. When you stood up in front of everybody and promised to do something. It's how I grew up. So the collaboration, the cooperation means really a lot to me. Like we said, even here in Clubhouse, I sometimes I'm taken aback with a lot of people when I don't feel like there is a consistency, because once you give your trust, you give it all. And you need the same trust to be, you need people to uphold it. That's the best cooperation that we can have. To know that if I'm in trouble, I can call Simon. To know that 100% in my heart, Simon will do whatever he is capable of doing to help me. And it should be vice versa. So that's the importance of cooperation for me. And as far as Eric, I am impressed. I am impressed. Didn't listen to the whole thing. I'm sorry I was a little late, but I just listened your answer to the question previously by Amy, and I am just impressed by. I know about Vodoun. I wouldn't say that I'm initiated in any of those, but I am in my family. I am a princess in a way of also a way of belief. In my family, we have generation. We sing it in a song, so I can sing you all my generation as far as we know. I can sing in a song, and we go and sing and sing and sing, and that's how we keep the names. And in my generation, it goes from the woman. You wouldn't believe it, but we put the princess as a woman because we have decided. I think they have decided from the beginning that they will never know for sure if the child is the man's child, but they will always know it's the woman's child. So we have this other lineage of princesses that get chosen by kind of mysteriously, and it doesn't go from mother to daughter. It goes to, they just get together and they choose in the next generation who is going to be the princess when the other princess die. So the last princess was the sister of my grandmother, and I was in France when my father called me and said, "You've been chosen." And so it's also probably the kind of things I've been through a lot of rights, and I've been a rebel, right? I rebelled, and I came to America. I married an American man, but even a few years after my marriage, I went back to Africa and with my husband, and we went through some ritual, but that is in my family. It's not like a whole it's not like a whole religion, but it made me see so many different, like they do it like at midnight. They do a lot of very, 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 very strong traditions. That also even that changed my husband, who is Caucasian from America. But it changed him, and he is absolutely okay with us going back to Africa, which makes me go all the time now. And it's also very okay to be buried in Africa, because I can't be buried anywhere else than where they bury the princesses. So it's deep, it's big, and I'm learning a lot from you. I didn't know about other culture. Unlike you, I was literally running away from my culture. And I was very surprised that out of all my sisters and all my siblings, all my cousins, I am the one they chose. I was so surprised, but they said I was the one that came up. And so just to say, I believe 100% in our African tradition. I believe 100% in our culture. I would love to learn a little more from people like you or Amy. And that's it. My name is Mamzi, and I'm done speaking.
Excellent, Mamzi. So, Dr. Eric, just take notes. You're going to reflect on the comments from all our speakers in just a moment. Thank you again, Mamzi. I just appreciate that. And I learned so much about you in just those few minutes. I love it. Jay, how are you? And what are your perspectives on this proverb and what you're hearing in this moment? And share with us where you're joining us from as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear Simon, and I'm joining you from Seattle. I'll just very quickly give my perspective on this proverb. The first thing that came to mind was the movie 300. It's one of my favorite movies of all times, 300. And um, every soldier has to be able to hold that shield at a certain level. At the same time, there must be uniformity, there must be exactness, and there was power in that. The drumming, and there was someone that wanted to do it, and he couldn't. He had the passion, he had the desire, he knew about the history of the 300, but he didn't have the physical ability to hold that shield for a certain length of time and at the level in order to be uniform. So he couldn't join. All of that being said about the finger and the drumming, that there is power and rhythm in drumming. There's history associated with it. There's healing in drumming, and there's also that fear factor. I mean, you feel it in your blood, you feel it in your bones, you feel it in your heart, you feel it in your spirit. There is a voice in drumming, and you cannot do it with one finger. You have to be able to go all in, to be able to use your whole hand, your palm, your energy that goes into that drum. Is a way of bringing people together, and is also a way of frightening an enemy. So the drumming requires your whole body. The same thing, if you're doing something in life, you cannot do it halfway. You can't put one or two fingers in there in terms of your dedication and your commitment. You have to go all in if you want to be successful. So I'll just leave it at that. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak.
Yeah, I'm grateful. As you are speaking, it reminded me of recently my three daughters and I were drumming in our backyard, and drumming is very, very spiritual. You know, we drummed to an extent that, you know, one of our neighbors was definitely, was definitely poked by the spiritual vibrations that we were bringing in the neighborhood, because once you are really, really drumming, the kids go crazy. You see them being taken over by the spirits, and the way they are dancing, they have no control over their movements. They are just flying around, So before we knew it, there was a neighbor yelling across the fence, neighbor, reduce the drumming, and the kids were like, no. Anyhow, Tiff, how are you doing? Share your perspectives briefly, and also share with us where you're joining us from today. Thank you so much.
Yo, hey Simon, how are you doing? Hello to everyone here in the Africa Father in America Club, where I believe the ancestors vibe. I love it here. Thank you, Simon, for this space. I appreciate your strength and consistency. Yo, to my sister Jay and my brother Johnny in the audience, and everyone that we get to fellowship with often. This proverb today, you can't beat the drum with one finger, is something that really is resonating with me, especially during this time in my life where I'm understanding the importance of collaboration and the greater collective. I'm understanding that who I am as an individual not only enhances myself, but it enhances my family, it enhances my community, it enhances my just my environment at large. And when I think of the drum, I think of the marching. When you think of the army, or a military line to where they march to a beat. And it takes more than one motion, more than one person, more than one movement, more than one a stance for the march to make sense, for it to be in alignment, for it to get a group of people from one position to another destination. So I think it's just so important that we understand that collaboration is key. My greatest revelation post pandemic is that it takes two people to make one child. And if you want to birth something and leave a legacy in this world, you're going to have to be open and willing to connect with other great people, superheroes. You're not the only great person that was created by the divine spirit. So to connect with other great people, other superheroes, other people that have the same cadence as you in order to get to the destination that is predestined for you. Thank you so much, Simon, for this opportunity. And I can't wait for Africa Day. The homie signing out from Ohio, USA. I'm out.
Thank you so much, Tiff. I just appreciate you, and I can't wait for Africa Day as well. Let's hear from Stella quickly, and then come to Darwin, and then come back to Dr. Eric, so that we can hear how you can stay connected with him, and also just your closing remarks based on everything that our friends and audience members have been sharing. Stella, are you there?
Yes, I'm here, Simon. How are you? And how is everyone today? Today's proverb talks about drumming, and I want to agree with everyone about drumming being associated with some spirituality. I remember growing up, we would drum late in the evening to like appease the ancestors, something like that, and it was a lot of fun because we would gather around so many children in the area, and then we would drum so hard and dance and then we would be happy after that. So yeah, that's what the proverb is reminding me of today. And going by what everyone is saying, I think I look back and I agree with those days that we were trying to make our ancestors happy. So thank you, and I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stella. I appreciate your support. I'm working with Stella as well at One Vibe. So you can follow Stella and Lavender if you want to know more about what we do at One Vibe, both in Kenya and here in Seattle. Now, I want to come to you, Darwin. Darwin, how are you? And where are you joining us from? And what are your thoughts on today's proverb? It says, you can't beat the drum with one finger. And if you have any comment to my guest, Dr. Eric Montgomery, feel free as well.
My name is Darwin. Blessings to everyone here on this app. I'm coming to you from the state of Michigan. To me, there's strength in numbers, and beating a drum with just one finger there's no emotions, no feelings. To me, drumming is like the heartbeat. It's a feeling and emotion. And everyone has already mentioned about the collaboration, the coming together, the joining of forces. And it takes all of us. That other proverb that says it takes a village to raise a child. To me, it takes all my body parts to bring together beautiful music for this life. I don't have a whole lot to say. I'm kind of late to the room, so I will end there. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Darwin. I remember you joining us multiple times in the past, so thank you for coming back. I hope you will join us tomorrow. And also Wednesday, we have Africa Day. It's a 24-hour marathon, and it's just an incredible event that I can't do on my own. A lot of people in this room are involved with producing Africa Day. I just want to thank you all. Thank you for going from room to room promoting Africa Day. Thank you for going across social media promoting Africa Day. And, I want to now bring the microphone back to our special guest, Dr. Montgomery. Just share with us what you heard from our friends who are reflecting on the proverb, and also on the interview I've been having with you. And then also speak briefly to how can people who are watching or listening stay connected with you.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Wow. I mean, we talk about collaboration. I miss these rooms. I don't always miss Clubhouse with some of the politics that have gone on, but boy, I miss this room. This is what it's all about. Mumsy, you're my sister. I've been impressed with you from day one, the amount that you do to elevate people who are marginalized in very deep ways in Cameroon, how persistent you are with it. It moves me and impresses me. So just to let you know, you might be impressed with my words, but I'm impressed with your actions. I hadn't seen Tiff for a while. I see that Katie had just joined us, and Lavender. I followed everyone I wasn't following, on just a lot of really astute comments, especially on this proverb. You know, the depth of this proverb and how important it is for us to work together. But yeah, those are my thoughts on that. I can tell you this: if you look up my name, Eric James Montgomery, and you put in the word voodoo on Google, voodoo, you're going to get tons and tons of stuff. A lot of stuff is available for free on my academia page. If you just put in Eric J. Montgomery Academia, anyone, by the way, nowadays that has a PhD in political science, chemistry, whatever it may be, they're posting their things open source on academia. There's other websites too, like ResearchGate, but academia is a good one. You don't have to be an academic to follow it and to access it. It's a way for you to get really free, good knowledge by peer-reviewed sources. If science matters anymore, I wonder sometimes. But, you know, by people who are writing and other people with PhDs and a lot of experience are evaluating it and editing it. That's why peer-reviewed journals are important. My film behind me, you can see there's a couple films, Chasing the Spirit and African Earthman. Chasing the Spirit is full length. You can buy it through Art Films Australia and other places, but it's full length on YouTube. You just put in Chasing the Spirit and put in the word Vodoun or Goro Vodoun or Montgomery. You should see it pop right up there. I don't know if I can share the link in the thing, but you can watch that full film. That film is about 20 years old, but it's about spirit possession and voodoo. And then the African Urban is a lot more about plant medicine, and that I can make available to you as well. And the book is available from Indiana University Press. The paperback version, the hardcover version here is $90. It's a lot, but the paperback is, I think, $39. You know, these are, I always tell my students, books are like tools, you know, it's like a body without a soul, like Cicero said, of room without books. It's so true. I have so many books. And if you really want something and don't have a lot of cash, just email me. And you can look up my university emails at Wayne State or Michigan State, or you can just email me at my name, ericjamesmontgomery@gmail.com. Just add in my middle name there, ericjamesmontgomery@gmail.com. Do some research. Tell me what you're interested in. I can probably give you a PDF version. I'll skirt copyright and other things. I believe in it. It's not like us academics make a lot of money off this anyway. So screw them. Anything that you might want is there. But almost everything you can get on academia. Both of my films you can get on YouTube. I'm Eric J. Montgomery 1 at Instagram. If you want to send me a follow, I keep it private, but I'll accept anyone who's interested in Africa. And I'm Sakra Bode on Twitter, but beware, it's my opinions are mine and mine alone, and you may not concur with all of them. I got so yeah, those are some ways to get a hold of me. And then on Wednesday at 1 o'clock Eastern time, or 1 o'clock Pacific time, 4 a.m. Eastern time, in the second hour, I'll be joining you on Wednesday to talk about African spirituality with it sounds like just a dynamite group of Sankomas and Konos and different folks. So I'll be listening and taking notes. I'll actually try to take a nap because that's 4 a.m. for me. Although I'm up till 4 a.m, I'm not normally up till 5, sometimes 3 or 4. So I'll take a little nap and set my alarm for 3:30 and power through. And I look so forward to it. And then when I wake up, I'll have it in the background most of the day while I'm working here and stuff in the yards. So I'm going to have to show you this because other people can't see it. But just to entice you to get here with the kids, this is just the backyard. So I'm showing him the back forest. I was showing you the backyard where you to come and visit, Simon, and do some fishing.
Yeah, show me. Well, I didn't see all of it. You know, you're like you're giving me an appetite, and you're not showing me enough of it.
Let me walk and see because of the Wi-Fi. Let me show you the front because you'll love it.
Wow, I love it. It's beautiful. Nice.
Yes.
Nice.
All for it, you know. I'm a city kid that's got his place in the woods now, isolating. In fact, maybe we hold Africa Day celebrations next year here north of Detroit on the property. I could probably host 50 to 100 people here, especially if we did it in May. And so maybe we think about that where we actually get together and do something separate. A Madaraka Festival East.
Why not? Let's talk about that. You're very generous. You know, you're generous with your time, and you're generous with your resources, and I really, really appreciate that. We are coming to the tail end of our conversation today. I do want to give a shout out to some of my, friends and family that I see here on Clubhouse. Just before we wrap up, Rich Mo, thank you for being here. Bigani, thank you for being here. And I see Natalie, Johnny, thank you for being here. And Laron, thank you for all your support. And I do see Ade and Tanisha and Elflows and Chanya and Quality. Thank you all for joining us. And then Bibi, I just want to give you a second to speak about Africa Day, just 30 seconds, why you're excited about it. And then Katie. Then after that, we are going to wrap up our session. Go ahead, Bibi.
Thank you so much, Simon. And yes, I am so excited about Africa Day, and especially after yesterday's dry run. I'm like, and that was just a sample of what's to come. If you want to learn more about African spirituality and the traditions and stuff, definitely I would highly recommend that. And I'm gonna put it in my schedule, because I will be listening here 24 hours. But that specific one, I'm gonna clear and make sure I sit down and take notes, because I have learned so much, and that was just the beginning. It wasn't the full thing. So I'm so looking forward to it, and I highly recommend everyone to come and learn more about Africa if you haven't. Even if you're African, trust me, there is so much things that you will learn from this Africa Day, because it's not just coming from one particular country. It's all parts of Africa. So come on, and come on and join in and learn and expand your territories and your knowledge. And that's all for my share today. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you so much, Bibi. And Katie, thank you again for your continued support for Africa Day since last year. Share with us, your perspectives on this year's, and also give everyone who is listening or watching some tips on how they can be involved. Okay. I wonder if Katie is far from her microphone, but she's been quite instrumental in helping promote Africa Day, and she's going to be a speaker for Africa Day this year as well. Anyhow, I just want to say thank you again as we come to the end of our time together today. I want to encourage you to subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you've been watching over there and you haven't subscribed, it would mean a lot. And also push the notification bell on YouTube, so that when I am live tomorrow during Africa Day on Wednesday, and I also do this daily African Proverbs show every Monday to Friday. Every Monday to Friday, I bring a new African proverb. We dissect it, we gain African wisdom, and we always have different guests. Wednesdays I have a poet, Thursdays I have Gogo Rutendo Ngara, and Friday, Tuesday, and Monday I look for different guests. In fact, Bigani, who is in the audience, has been a guest for the podcast in the past, and she's doing incredible work. I hope that you can all follow her and stay connected with her. Eric, thank you again for making the time. I know how busy you are. This took a long time for us to make happen, so I truly, truly appreciate you, my brother. Do you have any closing remarks before we end the session?
Just an enormous amount of gratitude. I'll see you all on Wednesday. I encourage people to always keep your head in the clouds, but your feet on the ground. And remember, it's not what happens to us in life, y'all. It really isn't. We all have a lot of bullshit and trauma. It's how we react to it. And try to remember that. That's the thing you can control, is your reaction to stuff. And that's very ancient African knowledge, not what happens to us, but how we react to it. And the final thing I want to do is extend an enormous amount of gratitude and love and respect for you for what you do with the African Father in America podcast. I just subscribed, even though I'm not on YouTube very often. What you've been doing on Clubhouse from day one, you are a gem. When things get really rough, and they do sometimes, it's people like you and people like Mumsy, what she's done in Cameroon and stuff, and so many others in the States. This is what keeps me going. And together we're unbountiful. But our ancestors expect this out of all of us, you all. It isn't about us. or about society. It's about them. It's too much suffering, especially Black suffering, has happened for us to stand by and to not speak truth to power and to not walk through the wormhole together towards something better. And that might involve some uncomfortable conversations and talking some things that a lot of people don't want to hear. But this cultural war, this battle between us and them, and I hate to construct it that way, is very real. Every vote, everything matters more now than at any time in history, because the balance of power of the world and the white supremacy in the world is tilting and it's pivoting, and they know that. And that's why you see Brahmanic supremacy in Brazil. That's why you see people like Bolsonaro in power, or in Brazil, and Modi with the BJP in India, who are pushing this Hindu supremacy, or the fact that the CPAC conference is going next week to Hungary, folks. The Conservative Party of America is hosting their thing in Hungary. This stuff is very real. But remember, there's more of us than them. Good always wins, and God and the ancestors see everything. And I love you all.
Wow, incredible. Thank you, my brother. Peace and love to everyone. See you all on the digital streets of Clubhouse and YouTube. And Wednesday is going to be historic. Thanks a lot.
African father in America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. Africa, tujikaze, tujikaze, America. Tujikaze, tujikaze, jikaze. You are listening to African Father in America podcast by Simon Javan Okello, live from Seattle, Washington, USA.